Part 2, baby! You know, this is good because I'm actually uploading and I'm, you know, you see this now and it's, you know, brand new and fresh. But the problem is that since this is the second part of something, I have no idea what I'm going to upload after this. So, you know, I guess we'll figure out. But without further ado, let's begin part 2. Disneyland's secret tunnels. So the first part of this isn't actually really a theory at all. It's a game theory. It's actually real because tunnels actually do exist under Disneyland. The tunnels are supposed to be proposed by Mr. Disney himself, and the legend goes as when he was in the Tomorrowland section and seeing a cowboy walk through, it would kind of take the magic out of the whole Disney experience, seeing a character that's not really supposed to be in that area. So they built massive tunnels underneath Disneyland itself as a means of transportation and for those characters and actors to get to places quicker and not having to pass through a completely different genre of place that they're supposed to be in. And the tunnels have expanded now to, well, at least over the years, to being storage, security, and there's even some cafes down there. If you've had a behind the scene pass, you would actually be able to see a portion of these tunnels, and you would see that the walls are actually color coded in accordance to where that direction is going and which part of the park you're headed to underground. Where the theories come in is that there's around 400,000 square feet of just tunnel under Disneyland, and many of it is not mapped to the public. For reference, around 2,000 kids go missing every single year at amusement parks in general. That includes Disneyland and Disney World, but seeing as those two are considered the biggest amusement parks on the planet, a large percentage of that 2,000 is from Disneyland alone. Now, when you take that into perspective and just think about how big Disneyland is in general and the amount of disappearances that happen at Disneyland in general every single day, and that there are miles of tunnels under Disneyland, I mean, that's a pretty grim thought to think about, but I don't know if you guys have ever seen that map, but like there's a map of like how many disappearances and like the location or like how much disappearances by humans there are in America, and then it's compared to like the natural cave systems on it. So basically just like take that and apply it to Disneyland and be like, there's all these people at Disneyland, all these people go missing at Disneyland, specifically kids, and under the damn Disneyland are miles of tunnels. Anyway, okay, so I started to realize how nonsensical my little format for the tier list is, because Disneyland's secret tunnels I also do is real, but I'm gonna say it's the second best pique my interest. I also don't know why I put Dancing Plague over a damn Doom Ecology. Anyway, if the lottery exists to catch time travelers, exactly that. I mean, there's no really other way to explain it. I mean, the lottery is already like impossible to win, right? So when people win the lottery, either it's like, oh, they used all their luck or all their, you know, karma on that specific instance, or they're a time traveler from the future traveling back in time because they know the lottery numbers for that specific lottery, and then they're getting their past self to win that lottery. It's kind of like that question you get where it's like, oh, if you could travel back in time, what would you do? There's people that would be like, oh, I would see this person, oh, I would change this, oh, I'd kill Hitler. And then there's that one smart guy that'll be like, I would actually win the lottery because I would know the numbers. It's people like that, and the lottery is specifically and inherently designed to catch people like that, because time police, and if you win the lottery, you're a time traveler. So, I mean, you know, Yuffie. Elite controls the population with their permission. Now this has to do with the idea of the New World Order. Basically, the higher-ups have devised ways of thinning out the population systematically, whether that's starting a disease that pops up every once in a while, or creating wars and starting conflicts over things they don't really care about. If they all agree that the population is getting too high or out of control, then one nation can pose a threat to another nation, and they both agree to diminish and deplete their population, like their numbers. For some of you, this may ring some bells if you're really deep into stuff like this, into Operation Northwoods. For those of you that don't know, of course, Operation Northwoods was around 1962, around the whole Cuban Missile Conflict crisis. It was proposed that the CIA would pose or commit actual acts of terror against U.S. citizens and U.S. military, and then blame it on Cuba to provide reason to go to war with Cuba. Because there was all this tension going on with the USSR and Soviet Union and stuff like that, specifically with Cuba and the missiles being in Turkey and the missiles being in Cuba near America. So for it to be portrayed that Cuba was terrorizing America, we would look weak, and then we would have reason to start war with them. That's basically the summary of Operation Northwoods. Now, it was declined by Kennedy, thankfully, I guess, but the whole idea that the elite controls the population can easily tie into that if you try hard enough. I mean, think about it. We've reached 8 billion people on the planet, right? And it's just exponentially getting higher, right? So at some point, Earth's going to eventually overpopulate. Now, whether that means that we find ways of getting rid of overpopulating, stopping overpopulating, there's a mandate on how many kids you can have, colonize Mars, whatever may have you, this is a real issue that we're probably going to end up facing. So, what are we going to do? The elite will control the world population, and maybe World War III will start, and it'll be over something completely arbitrary. And if it is something over nothing, we know what they're really doing. You know, I was originally debating putting elite controls world population into real, because I do think that is kind of real. However, I am going to put it into heroin just for the sake of balance, but also that is, like with Operation Northwoods, that is quite the scary thought to think of if it were to come into fruition. Staring anxiety. Basically brain rot personified. You know those TikToks where it's like split screen of Subway Surfers and then a Family Guy clip, or then like slime or Minecraft parkour, and then the actual video and it has subtitles for every single word that the person's saying? Like, you know, that overstimulating stuff? It's basically that. It's basically that our attention spans are cooked, fried, and staring at a screen for this extended period of time will essentially literally rot our brain. And going back to the whole New World Order and elite thing, there are screens everywhere we go for this reason exactly, for the elite to control us and to kind of make us more submissive. Kind of like that whole porn idea before in the last one. It's kind of the same thing. I mean, you look at Times Square, New York, there's a screen everywhere. Obviously, yes, it's for advertising and, you know, whatnot, but where does advertising stem from? It's the same exact thing. It's control. So, all these screens around us and all these little split screen Subway Surfer, Family Guy, funny moments things is literally just rotting our brain. I mean, I'm not really one to speak. I'm not that bad. I don't watch the split screen stuff, but I mean, like, look. I literally have a reality TV show on in the background while I'm recording this. Now, in my defense, we're going to start talking about some really unsettling and scary things later on in this list. So I kind of have this as my pillow, as my comfort, but still, this is also just evidence of the same thing. So because of that, staring anxiety, honestly, nah, it's real. Who am I kidding? Huh? I literally outed myself for it. Also, what? Bug chasing. So this apparently is a real thing among online crowds where people want to contract and spread sexually transmitted disease to as many people as possible. Usually, most of the time, the victims being unbeknownst to them. And some people try to collect as many as they can, and that's what they call the gift. So I don't know a whole lot about like the statistics and just the veracity of a lot of things like that, but all I know is that some of it's consensual, some of it's not, right? So, which leads into serial killer rabbit holes and pipelines and fun stuff like that. With that being said, I'm pretty sure we can agree that's quite harrowing. Antarctica preservation / Agartha. You know, when I was talking about all these screens in front of me, I really probably need to shut these off and close my damn window when I talk about this one. If you guys see a sniper bullet or a sniper laser hovering over my head, just try to warn me. So during World War II, Hitler and all of his little lackeys were complete schizos. So Admiral Byrd was sent to go snoop around in Antarctica, to nose around and poke and prod at what the Nazis may have been looking for in Antarctica. When he returned, he was told to hush-hush about it and keep quiet, to tuck his tail between his legs, because apparently he found something he wasn't supposed to. Agartha. Agartha basically being hollow earth theory, and that the gravity reverses and it flips, and that there's a whole lot of people, a whole civilization living within hollow earth, and the entrance to it is in the South Pole, Antarctica. You can also tie this into missing people, the Disneyland tunnel thing. Like I said, the list goes on. But anyway, since Admiral Byrd was told to not talk about anything he found there, he found something he wasn't supposed to. The funniest thing personally for me about this was that when I was doing research for this, I found this one YouTube video apparently titling itself as Admiral Byrd's Notes from His Voyage to Antarctica, or something like that. And I was listening to it, but it was pretty long. But I was listening to it, and the beginning was very, very convincing, because it was like, oh, we're flying over the Southern Ocean, I can see the crest in the horizon, there's no ice wall, but I can see all the ice forming and all of the seawater erosion around the icebergs, making it look like ships and UFOs, right?
Smooth flight conditions again. 0910 hours, vast ice and snow below. Note coloration of yellowish nature, and disperse in a linear pattern.
It sounded real. It sounded like an actual Antarctica voyage. But as it kept going on, it started just getting more fictitious, and to the point where it was like, I see a glowing light in the horizon. Oh my god. I think it's 7-foot-tall people. Slendermen? There's green and white yellow lights illuminating from under the ice.
11:45 hours. I'm making a hasty last entry in the flight log. Several men are approaching on foot toward our aircraft. They are tall with blonde hair. In the distance is a large, shimmering city, pulsating with rainbow hues of color. I do not know what is going to happen now, but I see no signs of weapons, and those approaching. I hear now a voice ordering me by name to open the cargo door. I comply. End log.
Right, and it just keeps getting more bizarre and bizarre. I'm like, I just got goofed, gaffed, and laughed. Are you kidding me? World War II lore, UFOs, and Antarctica is kind of a big nail hitter for me, so it's definitely going to pique my interest. Luna Park Train Fire Demon. On June 9th, 1979, the Luna Park amusement park had a ride named Ghost Train, which killed 7 people. Essentially, those who lost their lives lost them in a brutal fire, and shortly after there was an investigation which the tragedy was ruled as arson, but the perpetrator was never caught. At a later time, a woman who had lost her son and her husband to the tragedy was looking through her photos and found this image. Now, aside from the sheer eeriness of this picture, this person was nowhere to be found after the incident took place, and also the amusement park had no mascot or costume and inventory of this, and the guy was also just never, there was no trace of a man working there, basically. So not only is it odd that that same day that the tragedy happened, this guy is in the photo with the kid that also lost his life in it, but also that the parent let the kid take a picture with that. I mean, are you kidding me? If you haven't connected the dots, this goes a step deeper. Some people say the man's costume has a striking resemblance to Moloch, one of the gods of the Canaanites in the Old Testament. Moloch is mainly depicted as a bull with horns, with its primary form of worship being the sacrificing of children at an altar. So there's a man dressed as Moloch at an amusement park the same day 7 people die on a ride in a fire. I mean, truly, I have no words. This one really kind of shook me to my core, if you will, or I don't want to say it resonated with me, but this one kind of really stuck with me. The worst part about this is that I had to re-record this entire thing because in the background, I had the goddamn TV on right after I was explaining the staring anxiety thing and how people love to have screens around them. So I recorded that entire thing with that on in the back. Anyway, that was not fun to retell twice, so let's move on. If you think this isn't harrowing, I don't know what else to tell you. Despair code is a theory for the equation of kill switching, or anti-lifing. It's the idea that a human brain can be infiltrated with a line of code or specific set of words that will activate something in the brain. What it activates exactly is debated, but most say it can cause extreme depression or, in some cases, death. So, on the extreme scale, this could be used as some sort of cosmic weapon to destroy a population. For those of you familiar with SCPs and just the study of emetics in general, this is either very interesting to you, or you already kind of know it. What's most interesting to me about this is just out of ego, because I've kind of thought about this thought experiment before even knowing this. Just the idea of kill switching. Like, you know, on babies, there's like the soft spot on their head where, like, if you touch that, they'll probably die, or just something will neurotically get damaged, right? I've always wondered the same thing with the brain. Like, is there a certain phrase or an action or emotion or just stimulation to the brain that can just immediately kill a person? Like, if I say the words Aurora Tango Lazarus Pit from Batman Arkham City with this SCP logo in the background watching a reality show 48, like, does that kill a person? That specific line of text, unguessable, kind of like a combination that can never be guessed. Just a specific code, can that be orally spoken to a person and that'll immediately activate something in the brain that kills them? And that also goes into, like, sleeper agent things, like, you know, the Winter Soldier and just stuff like that, the whole boxcar thing, the whole numbers thing in Call of Duty. I'm just trying to make as many references as I can, but you get the point. Despair code is real. So, there are only 3 more left. I know, right? Crazy. But these are the big 3. And spoiler alert, all of these are going to be apotheosis, as these have the most time spent on them, and also biasly, they're my favorites. So let's dive on in. Robert Golf and the glass camera. Oh boy. So this has to do with the theorization of a viewless recorder in the 90s and 2000s. Viewless basically being an invisible camera. Camera that records something, but the camera itself physically is invisible. A glass camera. So it's basically used to be allowed to record things without evidence of something recording it. And while this fundamentally breaks all known laws of physics and light that we know, the details of how it was created were never revealed to the public. And this camera isn't physical. Instead, it's psychic powered. So supposedly, there was once a famed psychic named Robert Golf, who you won't find anything about on the internet. Meaning the government obviously did their job by wiping his name clear from existence ever. Or, you know, there's either mass disinformation campaigns, Class A amnestics following Y2K, or whatever may have you. Also, when I mean you won't find anything on him, you won't. You'll probably find stuff about PGA, about real golf, right? You will not find anything about Robert Golf. And even if you do, it'll be like some obscure subreddit talking about exactly what I'm going to talk about. But as terms of as a person and as a psychic, nothing. I mean, you can go ahead and try if you want to get put on a list. Also, I thought of something funny. Imagine every single time you looked up something suggestive or person of interest-y on the internet that a little eyeball popped up in the bottom left or bottom right of the screen. Like, you know how in Fortnite when you kill somebody and they spectate you and it's a little blinking eyeball? What if that happened, like, when you look up, like, how to make a clock, right? If you do that, by the way, clock is a colloquialism for bomb, so don't do that. You will probably get flagged. But anyway, this guy Robbie worked with the government on astral projection. According to the theory, he would be hooked up to imagers placed on his head, which would allow him to project his thoughts onto a screen. He would then basically astral project out of his body and go out to view something, which would then be fed through his brain into the device and onto the screen, acting as a glass camera. Now, the way this all ended, however, was when Robert Golf astral projected for a little bit too long outside of his body and ended up dying. Then, for a brief few seconds, this is my favorite part, he went to heaven, the image of which was transmitted back to his body and onto the screen for the people involved in this project to view. The footage was then immediately swiped by the Holy Catholic Church and was put into the Vatican vault, where it still is to this day. Meaning, there is actual found footage of heaven. I mean, bro, are you kidding me? Found footage of heaven? Yeah, I already like found footage films in general. Those I think are the scariest. Found footage of heaven? Are you kidding me? Found footage of heaven? Oh my god. And for those of you being like, okay, yeah, whatever. Fine, yeah, whatever. Why the hell did the Holy Catholic Church come in You're not supposed to be here. You're not supposed to have this information. Take it from them and then put it in the Vatican vault. Are you kidding the phone right now? Oh my god, that is just crazy to me. So, you know, if you had an embarrassing yearbook photo in like 5th grade, or you, I don't know, you fell in the cafeteria while trying to find a seat back in the day, if you want to get scraped from the internet and have no trace of you ever, all you have to do is astral project, study with the CIA, get your degree in, I don't know, the pineal gland, wash your fluoride out, get found footage of heaven, and have the holy... and have Pope Francis come in and sweep you under the rug, take your found footage of heaven and put it in his little lock keep. And then you'll be good, you'll be fine. Yeah. Feelings Autosuppression talks about the global desensitization that has happened over the past few decades. So my earliest memory of something that scared me was Jeff the Killer, like the picture. I mean, that image truly horrified me to my core when I was a kid. I could never see a cheek-to-ear smile without thinking of that bloodied edit with the smile peeling all the way off the teeth. In Smile Dog as well, too. Horrified me. I mean, to this day, it's kind of like seeing a beehive. It's just like, okay, whatever, right? I'm obviously not scared anymore, but, you know, it definitely kept me up for weeks. Okay, maybe months, right? But over time, after seeing it through the internet, it just stopped being scary, or at least it got that much less scary. For you, it may have been Slenderman, Herobrine, Ben Drowned, Sonic EXE, Abandoned by Disney, Squidward Suicide, Momo, The Russian Sleep Experiment, Cupcakes, BlankRoomSoup.avi, and even those of you curious enough to step into the world of Live League as a kid with unrestricted internet access. But even after all of this, you eventually stopped caring. The same goes with actual human tragedies or suffering news. When hearing about one of those, it initially made you worried or uneasy, but then it started to become such a common thing that you began to stop caring. That consistent loop of negative emotions can cause you to suppress them whenever they come up, which is a normal human response. However, when this reaction is happening to the population constantly, years on end, the results get concerning, specifically with each generation that comes from this. Children today aren't nearly as concerned about world events as perhaps the generation preceding them was at their age. I mean, how many times has World War III trended on Twitter? The death of the Queen? 9/11? So, simply disregarding basic human emotions has potentially changed the course of humanity forever. God of the gaps never existed. God is either absolute or he doesn't exist. God of the gaps is a theological perspective in which gaps in scientific knowledge are taken to be evidence or proof of God's existence. Basically, when Christians can't find a meaning for something in the world or a reason, they use God as a way to fill in those gaps. See, before modern science, we really weren't able to explain how the world works outside of supernatural means. But now that science is at a point where we nearly understand how the world works, those gaps have gotten smaller. So those that have applied God to those gaps have also created God to be smaller. Essentially, the bigger our discoveries in science and about how the world works gets, the smaller the gaps for God to be used become as well, making God that much smaller. All in all, this is essentially an argument for atheism, but it is the exact antithesis to agnosticism, because there can't be a God that works some of the time, and then everything else is science. If there is a God, it has to be 100% through and through in the fabric of our lives, meaning the entire human experience must be curated. As Wendigoon said, this is either very comforting or very terrifying, depending on who you are. So, that's going to do it for Conspiracy Theory Part 2. I do have one more encore one, because those last three did get pretty dark pretty fast, so I guess I'll treat you. Eating food makes you die. I mean, really think about it. Everyone who has ever died ever has eaten food, right? So, eating food basically makes you die. The people you know have eaten food. And they've died, and they're dead. Eating food makes you die. And then, but then you say, oh, what if I don't eat food? I'm still gonna die because I'm gonna starve. Oh, really? Well, that's because you already had food introduced in your system. Maybe if you were a baby and you didn't breastfeed from your freaking mom or whatever, maybe you wouldn't have already gotten food in your system and you would... Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed. I really hope I can also get some other things out if I can get the old noggin working on creativity and things like that. I'm sure this will be a great video. Share it with all your friends. Share it with your dogs, especially. Dogs tend to really like my videos. So if you do have a dog or you know someone that does, try to share my videos with them. That's my biggest audience. You guys too, but anyway. Thanks for watching. Recording in front of a window is super paranoid, by the way.